Welcome back to Cheddar Business. The Brexit mess continues after UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson failed to get his new Brexit deal approved on Saturday. The ongoing uncertainty is still going on more than 3 years after the country voted to leave the European Union. Joining us now is Femi Oluwole, the co-founder and chief spokesperson at Our Future, Our Choice. Femi, it's so great to have you on the show. What comes next? Explain to us, in terms of this 3.5-year battle that has been going on, what comes next for the UK?
So essentially in 2016, 52% voted to leave the EU, but that was after a very, very intense debate about what leaving the EU would look like. Many people said that it would damage our trade with the EU, our closest trading partners, but I mean, they were called Project Fear, scaremongering. And now we have a deal that most people who voted for Brexit have questions about. For example, this deal means that we essentially, in Northern Ireland, they will follow the regulations of the EU, but they'll no longer have any say over those regulations. Right now, the UK, as a member of the EU, has 3 times the voting power of the average EU country. And so we'd essentially be saying, all right, part of the UK is no longer under our jurisdiction and will no longer be able to influence it. So there are certain sections of the voting population, especially the unionists, people who think that that Northern Ireland should be part of the UK in Northern Ireland, who were in favour of Brexit, who aren't okay with the Brexit deal that's been presented. And so that's the situation we're in right now. Parliament has said that, all right, Boris Johnson, you've presented your deal to Parliament, but that we haven't had enough time to scrutinise it. And so they're saying, all right, we want to have a few days to get all the legislation through and to scrutinise the deal, and then we'll move forward from there.
And some have called for a second referendum vote. Is that your organization's stance as well?
Yeah, I mean, the logic of having a referendum right now is plain for all to see. Because essentially, if there isn't another referendum, then Brexit will end up being essentially like signing a contract and letting the other side write the terms of that contract 3 years later. In 2016, Brexit was 4 words: leave the European Union. Right now, it's a 600-page treaty, which many Brexit voters are saying isn't good enough. I mean, you've got Nigel Farage, who's one of the chief people behind Brexit. You may have seen him hanging out with Trump. Now, he says that this deal, this Brexit, is the 2nd worst deal in history. Now, if you've got a significant portion of Brexit voters who are opposed to the Brexit we're getting, then there is no majority for it, given that they only won by 52% in 2016. So the most logical thing is that now that Brexit's been fully negotiated, we should put that deal to the people and say, all right, do you want our current relationship with the EU, or would you rather have a different one?
Young people, Femi, overwhelmingly voted Remain. Give me an idea of just what it's like for you there with your friends. You're on the ground in London. Is this something you're talking about with your friends? Is it something that they've stopped paying attention to because it's been ongoing for 3.5 years? I mean, take us into your world and how it's affected it.
There is a lot of Brexit fatigue because many people are bored of Brexit, but young people, if you ask them about Brexit, they are heavily against it. In 2016, the 18 to 24-year-old age group voted 73% to stay in the European Union. Now, that makes sense. Right now, as EU citizens, we have the automatic right to live, work, and love in 31 countries across Europe. That right is free for everybody. No visa applications, no work permits. We have the right to work wherever we like. There's no salary cap, for example. Our current government is talking about creating a salary cap for people coming to our country of about 36,000. Now, that would just create a system that only works for those who are rich. As for if you look at the demographics of it, if you take the under 65 population of the UK, so people who are of working age, that group voted Remain. So people often talk about how Brexit will damage our economy, but we'll work through it. Well, if you actually look at the mass of the situation, people who will literally be working through the damage that Brexit creates will be a generation that voted against it. It is fundamentally an injustice. We have elections every 5 years because we know that if we vote for something which fundamentally changes, we should have a chance to reassess. Well, this deal looks nothing like what was promised in 2016, and it is only right that the generation most affected by it have a say in where we move from here.
And Femi, what is your strategy at Our Future, Our Choice? What is your angle to get the voice of the young voters to be heard?
Well, we're making sure that we're very, very loud. I mean, we had the march on Saturday where just under 1 million people showed up on the streets of London to basically tell our parliament, do not vote for this deal. And there were thousands and thousands of young people who came on that march, were very active on Twitter, Instagram, etc. And I think it's just really important that people like us get out there and get on the news, and so people can see that other young people are interested in this topic and that it does affect us explicitly. Because as young people, we need two things. We don't have any money, so we need stuff to be cheap. And because of the fall in the pound, because of this whole Brexit thing, things are more expensive. And we need job options. And right now, we have access to a job market that spans 31 countries. And losing that, it goes against everything we need. Not to mention, just from a pure economic standpoint, if we're no longer integrated into the European market, we're no longer a logical base of European distribution, which means it no longer makes sense to base your factory, your place of employment, or your business here if you're planning to serve the market of the whole of Europe. And so those jobs will go, and because we're no longer EU citizens, we'll no longer be able to follow those jobs abroad. So it's a double whammy for young people. That's why we're making it very, very clear, we do not want this.
Femi Oluwole is the co-founder and chief spokesperson at Our Future, Our Choice. Femi, thank you so much for joining us from London. We appreciate it.